Hi, my name is Brian Dove, and this is my introduction video. I guess the first thing you're wondering is why I'm doing this on my exercise bike. Well, that all goes to the question of how I became acquainted with Amazing Facts. But more on that later. What I'd like to do is just tell you a little bit about myself first. I am a retired accountant. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I attend the Knoxville First Seventh-day, or actually I'm a member of the Knoxville First Seventh-day Adventist Church. And originally I was born in Washington, D.C. area, grew up there. And my father was in the Foreign Service, so during that time I was blessed to be able to live in Japan and Brazil for a couple of years each. After college, I moved to Tampa, Florida, and lived there for about 7 years. And during the course of my career, the company I was working for got bought out by a company in Knoxville, and that's how I ended in Knoxville, and that was back in 1991. So I've been here for quite a number of years. Knoxville is a beautiful city. We're close to the Smoky Mountain National Park. We've got a number of lakes around, biking trails, and what we call an urban wilderness. So Knoxville is just a wonderful place to live if you like outdoor activities. The city itself has gone through a downtown revitalization with a number of people moving down there and shops and restaurants open up. So Knoxville has been in its own renaissance for the last several years, and I'm just very blessed to be here because I also like to have an active lifestyle. But anyway, while I'm retired now because the company I was working for went out of business back in 2009, and I was blessed to be able to fund my own retirement at the time. So since then, I've been retired. At first, it was trying to find what to do, but fortunately, God put a passion in my heart to volunteer. And I first started with United Way, and now I do a number of church volunteering for the church and other organizations outside the church, and as a result I feel like I'm working more now than when I was working full-time, but it's all been a great blessing. Volunteering really is a rewarding activity if you haven't tried it. But what I wanted to get to is how I became to know Amazing Facts and how I became a Seventh-day Adventist. That occurred, I joined the church back in 2015, but my journey started a few years earlier. Back after I retired, I was here on the exercise bike, and as was my normal practice, I would be watching the TV in front of me while I was exercising. Except one day, the channel I was watching, I get my TV through broadcast television. I cut the cord sometime before, and that also is a great blessing. But I live fairly near to Sharps Ridge, which is where the TV broadcast signals in Knoxville come from primarily for most channels. And so I would get a very good broadcast signal. And so I was going to watch this channel that I normally watch when I exercise, when for some reason the signal was very poor. It was coming in and out. And it was one of the larger stations in Knoxville, more established stations, one that would have the best signal. So it was sort of surprising to me, given that the weather outside was fine. There was no indication of why the signal was breaking up. So anyway, I just turned the channel to watch something else, and the next channel happened to be 3ABN, which we broadcast here in the Knoxville area. And at that time, we broadcast the Proclaim, the 3ABN, and also the Dare to Dream channels. And at first, I was going to move on, but something got me to stop. And what it was is I was watching, and forgive me if I butcher his name, David Asterix was doing a prophecy seminar, and it struck a chord with me because back when I was living in Tampa, I was at that time receiving a lot of literature from the Worldwide Church of God, which had similar teachings on the book of Daniel and stuff. So it struck a chord, it struck a memory, and it piqued my interest. So I started to watch the prophecy seminar, and I did my exercise. And then the next day, when I came in, I could have watched my old channel, but I decided, and it was coming in fine then, I decided to continue to watch David Asterix and his prophecy series, and I continued to watch that throughout while I exercised, and I learned a lot about the teachings of the church. So then, as time went on, I found that I was watching 3ABN more and more, and that's how I got familiar with Amazing Facts. I definitely enjoyed Doug Batchelor. I enjoyed his programs, his sermons. I enjoyed the Amazing Facts program, and also other programs on 3ABN. I really enjoyed Ron Halverson and John Bradshaw and the Pioneer Church. There's a number of good programming on 3ABN I continue to enjoy. Well, as I was watching the 3ABN programming as the months went by, and I began watching more and more, I became familiar with the Sabbath teaching, of course, and I had a feeling that maybe I should try this. I was searching, and so should I try the Sabbath? So I said, well, I wasn't really convicted necessarily. I was interested or intrigued as to really whether it was such a blessing or not. I didn't quite understand what the meaning of it was, and I felt the need to experience it. So since I was retired, it wasn't a big deal for me to set aside Friday night through Saturday to try to observe the Sabbath the way my understanding at the time indicated. And so I went on the internet to find the things to do and things not to do. Prior to Friday night, I mowed the lawn and cleaned the house and made sure everything was in order so I wouldn't have any temptations to do any work or that sort of thing. I prepared my meals, and I got ready for the Sabbath. And naturally, not knowing that much about how the Sabbath works, I figured, well, I know that I shouldn't be watching secular programming, but to pass the time, 24 hours is a long period to fill in sometimes when you're not sure how to do it is from a standpoint of rest. I watched 3ABN. So Friday night I'd watch 3ABN until I went to bed. Then I had a plan set aside, and so in the morning I would watch 3ABN in the morning. Around noon I'd take a nap. And in the afternoon, after I took my nap, I would maybe, when I woke up, I'd take a walk and then maybe watch a little more 3ABN to close out the day, and then I would close out the Sabbath. So I did that for a couple weeks, and I said I'd sort of like this, but I'm still not really convinced. So I still tried it. I went ahead and tried it for a third week. So I pretty much sure it was a third week, because I'm not absolutely sure because I didn't keep a journal or anything, but memory tells me that it was the third week. I did the same routine. By then I had sort of a lineup of channels that I enjoyed on 3ABN, and I'd go back and forth between Reclaim and the 3ABN channel primarily. And so I had my channels or programs lined up. And one of those programs was a program called Faith Chapel. And as Faith Chapel, if you're familiar with it, usually has a pastor from somewhere give a little sermon, a 30-minute sermon. And then this pastor, I didn't really pay much attention at first, gave a 30-minute sermon, but as I was watching, I got really, really intrigued because it dealt with aspects of Roman history that I wasn't aware of, and I was always fascinated with Roman history. But just something about the sermon really, really impressed me, and I really enjoyed it. And the rest of the day, I was just in a state of joy. I just felt blessed, and I just said, well, and that's when I came to the point, says, yes, I get it. I still can't put it into words, but I get it. Yet Sabbath is a delight, and as Isaiah said, it's a delight to celebrate the Sabbath. So from then on, I started keeping the Sabbath, without without forcing myself, or without. I just gladly kept the Sabbath. But I still wasn't going to church. I was just doing it on my own. And one thing that came up is like the next week, the fourth week came by, and I did my usual channel light up. And the first thing I was really hoping to see was the same pastor I saw the previous week on Faith Chapel. I was hoping that maybe he would have a series or something, because I still wasn't that familiar with the programming but as I now know, it's almost someone else every time. But so I looked for him. He wasn't there with someone else, and then I watched who it was, and I continued with my programming, and I did that week after week. And every week there would be a sense in my heart. I hope it was that guy I saw when I really that I really enjoyed and had that great beginning of my Sabbath, and why I'm now keeping the Sabbath. So each week came by, I'd do my channel lineup, I'd look for that one guy on Faith Chapel, he wouldn't be there. But I keep on having this thought in my heart to see this guy. And then it got so some other programming I preferred over the Faith Chapel programming. And so what I would normally do is I would check Faith Chapel to see if that guy was preaching, and then I would go to, I think it was John Bradshaw, and I'd watch his program instead. So that went on for a number of months, and then I started getting pressure from friends to do other things on the Sabbath. For a while I was able to tell them, I've been convicted to keep the Sabbath now, and I don't feel it's appropriate to go to a movie on Friday night, or go out to eat, Saturday or something like that, but I could go to your house or something like that and hang out. I was fortunate and blessed to have friends who are understanding, who are willing to accept me for who I am. But still, there was that pressure, and I felt that, and I started to think, I need to join a church if I'm going to see this through. And I was also starting to think about becoming a Sabbath keeper. And I was a Sabbath keeper, but to become a Seventh-day Adventist, or to join some other Sabbath church. So I looked at several churches, some non-Seventh-day Adventists that kept the Sabbath in the area, and also the Seventh-day Adventist churches. And I landed on the biggest church, which was the Knoxville First Seventh-day Adventist Church, as the first one that I would try, mainly because I thought it was a fairly large congregation. I could probably slip in. No one would notice me much, and I could, just sort of be there under the radar and just sort of check it out. So if there was a few false starts, I would get ready in the morning, put my suit on, fiddle around long enough that it was too late to go to church, and then I'd go back to my normal routine. And I did that for several weeks. Finally, I built up the courage to go to the Knoxville First Church. And I went in, and I managed to avoid the greeters. I slipped in unnoticed, went down to the pews. There was a member there who greeted me at the pew and invited me to dinner that day, and we've since become good friends. Also met another member later that we now do a lot of things together. And so I've already, just that first day, I met two good friends. Then I sat down on the pew and listened to the songs, and it just felt really good because it reminded me of the church I attended in Brazil. And it just was just a good vibe in that sense. And then I started to notice someone in the back there. I couldn't quite place it, but it seemed like I'd seen him before. And then it became time for the pastor to come up to speak, and I was like, that guy looks so familiar. And but he was gray-haired, had a gray beard, and looked older than what I thought. And but then he spoke, and his voice was very distinctive, and I knew right then that was the pastor I had been looking for all those months, and maybe a year, hoping to see again. And it was that pastor. He was actually new to that church. He'd only been there a month or two. But it was the pastor I had saw on Faith Channel, but that I had been yearning to see again. And then I knew, well, this is where God wants me to be. I think there was nothing more clear than that. So since then, just to wrap up the story, I've joined, after about 6 months or so, I became a member, was baptized, became a member of the church there. The pastor was Don Pate, since is retired, and we've been blessed by a new pastor, Pastor Marcus Swearingen Bates, who has a passion for evangelism, and he's just a great pastor. I highly recommend, if you're curious, to watch some of his sermons. If you go to the Knoxville First SDA website in Knoxville, Tennessee, you'll see a media link, and you'll be able to watch his sermons. He had a particularly good one this past Sabbath on August 11th. But anyway, he has a passion for evangelism, and so as part of that, a number of us at the church are enrolled in the Amazing Facts discipleship training. And so we're just started. It looks really good. We're really enjoying it. We had a conference call after the first week, and we're all just really encouraged that this will be something that will be useful to us, that we can help the pastor in his evangelism efforts. And so I look forward to continue to hear from you all and see your comments on Facebook. And I thank the Amazing Facts teams for all the good work that they're doing. So thank you, and you all have a blessed day.